Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks podcast. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the endocannabinoid system, obviously, but we're going to talk about a little bit of the research that's going on in the system. I'm going to do this in a little bit. So, if you're kind of tuning in, expecting to hear about deep research in autism and things like that, we're not going to do that on this one. I'm going to more broadly kind of go across research. But I hope to challenge you. And some of you guys, are product makers. Some of you guys are scientists. Some of you guys are test makers or drug developers, right? And so what I want to do is really challenge you to look at this system and look at the robustness of this system because we're just beginning. It's like this is kind of the land rush, let's say, as to research. It's not like there isn't research. There's quite a bit of existing research, but because of kind of the way, let's say, the pharmaceutical industry has behaved and the funding dollars have gone, and let's say the way that this has somewhat been controlled, you've had this just kind of damming up of knowledge here about this system that's just getting ready to explode, right? And it's going to be in so many different areas. I mean, the opportunities here are just insane. So if you're a business person, let's say, looking at the endocannabinoid system as a business opportunity, you have business opportunities in product, you have business opportunities in testing, you have business opportunities in drug development, and none of these really have anything to do with marijuana. Yeah. So marijuana is a way to impact the system, but so is black pepper, so is beta caryophyllene and black pepper, so is curcumin and turmeric, so is yangin and kava. So there's a lot of things, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But there's a lot of things in nature that impact the endocannabinoid system. I have discussions every day with people, with smart people, academics, PhDs, MDs, very smart people. And I'll be talking about the endocannabinoid system. They'll say, yeah, but you need cannabis to impact it. It's like, no, you don't. You need morphine to impact your endorphin system? No, you don't need cannabis to impact the endocannabinoid system. Now, cannabis is kind of a real cool, if you're spiritual, it's a very godly plant and expression of something that does very powerfully impact the endocannabinoid system. So once you know about the system, it's a great way to impact it. But kind of what we're doing now is a lot of, there's a lot of unknowns, let's say, with what we're doing now, because we haven't fully characterized and understand the endocannabinoid system. We're just, for whatever reason, I don't know why this is kind of I think a bias that we all have. But I had this bias, and this is kind of changing for me. So I'll tell you what my bias was. I never really thought of myself as a machine, right? I never really thought about, kind of what this configuration of cells is and kind of, what it means to kind of be physically a human, right? Thought a lot about the spiritual aspects of, being alive and all that. So a soul, and what does a soul mean, and how are we connected to God? And as we all do, we all have that, but none of us have really thought about our physical being as a vehicle. And what I mean by that is a predictable vehicle that's organized and built in a very logical fashion, that has predictable outputs and predictable, mechanisms of action and all that. So, we just don't, right now, we don't really think that way. But as we begin to think that way, and I think we all are beginning to think that way, the first thing that we're going to see is this endocannabinoid system as our master regulatory system. So again, I say all the time when I speak, the endocannabinoid system is kind of analogous to the sensor array and control system that we have in our vehicles, right? So it's involved with everything. So if you look at, okay, well, let's open up research, or let's discuss research on a car. Well, we could talk about a whole lot of things. We could talk about the leather in the seats. We could talk about a lot of stuff. But if we want to kind of talk about function first, we're going to talk about the sensor array, right? The sensor array and the mechanism of action. So how does your car know to change engine temperature or adjust valve pressure or do all those things? Well, it's got a computer in it, like hypothalamus, hippocampus. And again, endocannabinoid system is our sensor array and also our mechanism of action. So if we need to make changes, we need to change the oil pressure, we need to change the valve pressure in our body, pow, it's the endocannabinoid system that does that. So when I'm asked to, well, let's talk about research on the endocannabinoid system. Wow, it's kind of everything. It's everything about you. You know, we can talk about eyeballs, we can talk about teeth, we can talk about gingivitis, we can talk about gut biome, we can talk about exercise and fitness, we can talk about 100,000 different things as the endocannabinoid system. And, you know, I've done shows on most of that stuff. So if you go back and look through Chip Talks, you'll likely find a show. But today we're just going to do this a little different. So we're gonna talk a little bit bigger picture, because I just want to really drill home this point that the endocannabinoid system, first of all, it should be separated completely from medical marijuana. So medical marijuana is a good way to impact it. So it's a good way to impact the system, but so is turmeric, so is black pepper. So medical marijuana kind of needs to go in this category of natural products. And there's a lot of them that affect the endocannabinoid system, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. And I just want to kind of give you guys an idea of how many of these different plants there are that affect the endocannabinoid system. So this, just a picture up here, is a list of plants that affect the system. And there's way more than this. In fact, you know, it's kind of hard to find plants that don't affect the system or don't affect like a subsystem that's right under it. So you can see this is a pretty good, you know, list of interesting things. So echinacea, kava, it's really hard to find CB1 effectors in nature. So that is something that's kind of hard. And kava has a CB1 effector in it called yanganin, which is really cool. But, you know, again, these plants, what's the difference between these plants and medical marijuana? Does that matter? You know, is one stronger? Is one not as strong? And I will tell you that some things definitely on this list are stronger, way stronger in your endocannabinoid system than medical marijuana is. But we still need to study this, okay? So we still need to study how all of these plants affect the system and you know, what they're kind of doing in this system. So, you know, again, we're introducing things in our car that are at this master control level and kind of, you know, master sensory level, right? So here comes some beta caryophyllene, whammy, you know, and what can you do with that in your vehicle, right? So you can, you know, run the CB2 side of your endocannabinoid system and run it more efficiently because you're adding supplements to that system. So plants and how they affect, it was funny. This was in 2017. And I had just started working with University of Mississippi. And what I mean by that is I wasn't, you know, there at the university working every day. I was working with a researcher at University of Mississippi. But they invited me down to the university and they gave me a tour. I got to meet with a bunch of PhDs and everything at the university. But when I asked them, well, okay, well, what are we doing? What are we studying? You know, are we studying the endocannabinoid? No, we don't study the endocannabinoid system. But there was two PhDs there that were like, well, we have studied some plants that affect the endocannabinoid system. Now, some of you will know that University of Mississippi is where we've studied and produced medical marijuana for use in NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, National Institute of Health studies on marijuana for years. Okay. So it's University of Mississippi's kind of been the marijuana place, but they've grown it and they've specialized in growing it, not so much the endocannabinoid system. They are launching a master's level program this fall on the endocannabinoid system, on kind of medical marijuana, what it does to you, which is great and much needed, only second in the country to do that. But anyway, back to plants. So I was having a conversation with one of the PhDs there, and he's now at University of Alabama, I believe. But we were having this discussion. He goes, "Yeah, I've tested over 2,000 plants against. It was more than that, but I think 2,000 plants had action." He said, "I've tested about 2,000 plants against the endocannabinoid system, and you know, most of them have action." So he was able to kind of share a blinded list of those with me. It was amazing. But there's so many plants that have action in the endocannabinoid system, and there's so many plants that we haven't even studied yet. So again, cannabis will kind of affect this system, and that's kind of the way that we're, you know, what we're using mainly, let's say, to impact the endocannabinoid system. But, you know, if you're taking an echinacea supplement, you're impacting the endocannabinoid system. If you're taking a black pepper supplement, you're impacting the endocannabinoid system. In fact, you know, again, over 2,000 plants that they've studied, which are, you know, he studied, I can't remember how many he studied, but it was, you know, 75% of plants have some endocannabinoid activity. So it's like that high. Okay. Well, oh gosh, what happened here? There we go. Okay, so I'm not going to obviously read this to you, but and this is just someone's blog, so I just sort of, it's supporting what I want to say, so it's worked out well. But these are sort of the top 10 things that we can do to support the endocannabinoid system. Okay, so one of the things obviously is things from cannabis, right? So cannabidiol is a thing that will support the endocannabinoid system, but probiotics, it's kind of interesting. You have a lot of endocannabinoid receptors in your gut, and your gut is where you make the ligands for your endocannabinoid system. So you make ligands from dietary fats that we eat, and we build endocannabinoid ligands right off. So, anything there was going to help. All right. So botanical medicines. Now, this is a big category. So this basically goes back to all these guys, right? So there's a bunch of botanical medicines that will affect the endocannabinoid system. And again, and it's an engineering exercise a lot of times because they don't affect it as completely as you want. But if you know what you're doing and if you hold patents there, then get in there and go for it. Because this is a vast field. We'll never get done with the drug development in this field. So it just goes on and on and on and on. Omega-3 fatty acids. Okay. So omega-3 fatty acids will very positively impact the endocannabinoid system. In fact, there are 9. So let's say you're using marijuana to impact your endocannabinoid system, well, you're really benefiting from the CBD, the THC, the cannabinoids, and things like that. Okay. There's a good list of those things, but it's not like a ton of those things. If you look at omega-3 fatty acids, so if I give you chia seed oil, alpha linolenic acid, so I give you alpha linolenic acid in the form of chia seed oil, you're going to build 9 different endocannabinoid mediators from that omega-3 oil. Okay, 9, right? Not so much with DHA and EPA. You still build stuff. ALA is what you want. He's the master guy. Orgasm. That's interesting, isn't it? So orgasms will stimulate our endocannabinoid system. Alternating hot and cold. So, and this is kind of a thing that you can do with your immune system. This is why, cannabis hypermesis, everybody wants to get in kind of warm water. This is why, your body kind of changes temperatures. But will help stimulate an immune response, and it will, stimulate your endocannabinoid system. Exercise stimulates your endocannabinoid system. Dark chocolate stimulates your endocannabinoid system by virtue of anandamide. Anandamide, though, is built from basically omega-6 fat. So any kind of omega-6 fat is going to stimulate anandamide. Any kind of omega-3 fat is going to stimulate the 9 mediators that you build from omega-3 fats. So acupuncture is another way to stimulate it. Massage is another way to stimulate it. Electricity would be another way to stimulate it. So, lots of ways to stimulate the system. Okay. So let's look at real quick. So, kind of one category of things is plants, right? So we want to focus on plants that impact the system, and we want to fully understand the plants that impact the system. The other thing that we want to do is we want to basically understand these other things that impact the system. Because again, if you're building drugs for someone that are going to affect the endocannabinoid system, then I've got to know what plants might contraindicate, right, with my, endocannabinoid system drug. And I might be using some of these plants, to build my drug. And I've certainly got to know what other factors, environmental factors, are going to impact the success or failure of what I'm trying to do, of how I'm trying to help you. So recent advances in endocannabinoid system targeting for improved specificity. So this is talking about, we know that the endocannabinoid system is a pretty good target for therapeutic benefit. How do we be more efficient in targeting the endocannabinoid system? So this is a whole nother area of research, basically the efficiency of targeting the endocannabinoid system and how that goes. Let's see if there's anything else in here I want to talk about. So this is pretty basic, but CB1, CB2s, cannabinoids it's talking about from cannabis, right, is a way to impact the system. Let's see if it talks about using cannabinoid ligands specifically. So all you cannabis drug designers, you might be interested in some of that. But again, it's just talking about the toolkits of therapeutics of the ECS. And this is kind of interesting. Look at all the things that could be addressed, by targeting the endocannabinoid system. So, eyes, heart, central nervous system, reproductive, movement disorders, pain and inflammation, energy metabolism disorders. So obesity, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, all that kind of stuff. So lots and lots and lots of stuff. And again, each one of these things is its own research silo and complete, deep dive that has to be done in the endocannabinoid system in each of these. And it's been done, guys. It's not like this work hasn't been done. Okay, so let's say you decide you want to be a drug designer. I want to be an endocannabinoid drug designer. I want to go be like Chip Paul. It's hard right now, so you might wait a little bit. Wait till we plow some ground. Wait till we break down some walls. But if you want to do that, again, here's a look at all of the systems that are impacted, let's say, or could be impacted by endocannabinoid drugs. Now, why in the world? I don't know why every endocannabinoid paper. So this is a guard targeting the endocannabinoid system, and we need to talk about marijuana because it's just a way. But we could talk about black pepper, we could talk about turmeric, we could talk about a lot of different things. But every single one of these papers always starts with this ode to cannabis. Which is fine. It's kind of, I love it as an activist. It's kind of cool. We got all this in all these scientific papers, but cannabis is not the only way to impact this system. Okay. So it was discovered and kind of mapped out with marijuana, but again, marijuana is not the only way. And if you're going to be stuck in kind of the marijuana paradigm, you're going to miss all this wonderful drug development, all this wonderful science, all this wonderful stuff that is going to happen because of this kind of new information that's going to come out about this system, because it's a paradigm shift. It's going to change the way that, if you're a physician, it's going to change the way that you were taught about the human body and human function. It's certainly going to change the model of one molecule. Basically, a drug is a single molecule that has a single effect, that's single dose. That's gone. I mean, we're kicking that model's butt in natural products right now with engineering products, right? So that model is, we get way safer, better results, and not as strong, let's say, not safe results using engineered natural products. So, the old method of, let's say, drug development is gone. And, a lot of people don't even realize it yet, but it is efficacious as a lot of drugs. And we'll be doing our own drug development soon. All of this stuff, by the way, you can find in TrueMedX. Okay, so all of the stuff that I'm talking about, you can literally just go to TrueMedX right now and order a lot of things that I'm saying are just right on the level of rising to drugs, and some of them have that will be, we'll have to pull the formula when we take them up the drug development pathway. So go to TrueMedX, check it out. You'll be surprised, and you'll be surprised at how well those things work. Okay, so again, we're looking at research though. You're a bright, young, excited mind looking to get into this. You're maybe a neuroscientist or maybe a PhD in, biology. It doesn't really matter, human function. You want to get into the endocannabinoid system. I want to study this system. Well, pick your lane. I mean, literally the nervous system here, pain can be addressed in the endocannabinoid system. This is kind of cool through Cox. I don't know if I'm not going to read you anything, but I'll just see if I can find some statements here real quick. But COX-2 and PGE2, so here we go. PGE2s this is the main reason for pain. So PGE2s through the COX-2 kind of action. So if you can inhibit COX-2, which is what NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs do, although they do it very unsafely, then that's a very good way to reduce pain. And so you can do this in the endocannabinoid system as well. And there's several different methods to do that that'll cause pain relief. Seizures is another thing that's really an endocannabinoid system thing. Again, seizures come about when your nerves can't be regulated. And what is our master regulatory system? It is the endocannabinoid system. But seizures are not, it's not like a one-trick pony. There's a lot of different kinds of seizures. So there's grand mal seizures, there's the micro seizures, there's, the drop seizures, which are, the drop seizures to me look completely different than other type seizures, although they are the same, unable to kind of keep a beat, so to speak. But, again, that's a whole area of study right now in the endocannabinoid system. Clearly, endocannabinoid solutions work because you have things like Charlotte's Web that is a cannabis-based solution. But again, it's supplementing the endocannabinoid system, and that, appears to work, certainly in certain, it doesn't work all the time, which is crazy. It works in certain circumstances at certain times. And sometimes you need some THC. Sometimes you just need CBD. Sometimes you need some THC. So all that is just, wow. First of all, seizures can be abated. Okay, well, that's really cool. And then it's variable as to, how that works and everything. That to me just screams, research me, study me, dive in deep, boys and girls, because there's a lot here. It's like a big pool party, just welcoming you in to Seizureville, right? Anxiety is another one, so, and again, it just, CBD is going to help with anxiety, but why? And how does that work? So, I can tell you, but you need to dive in and figure it out on your own. Depression, depression is another one. So really any mental kind of thing, I'll give you something to think about. So let's say we're all dysregulated in this endocannabinoid system and it's set real tweaky, it's set real reactionary, like where it's going to react real easy to anything, right? So it's going to be real reactionary, but it's hard for us to dial it back right now. And that's exactly where we're at. And it sounds stupid and so inanely simple, but it's because of the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids that we eat. And eventually people will wake up to that and go, damn, Chip, you were right a long time ago. But let's wake up to it now because I'm trying to help you now. But anyway, the way that we set this tweakiness in the endocannabinoid system in us right now is super tweaky and super inflamed. So riddle me this, Batman. Let's say you have a fight or flight response. I got the crap scared out of me. And I can't reel that back. I can't dial back that response. Is that going to result in lingering depression? Is that going to result in PTSD? Is that going to result in lingering anxiety? Yes. Okay. Yes. All right. So there's a lot of solutions in here. Addictions. Is it the same to crave sugar as it is to crave heroin? Is it the same to crave sugar or food as it is to crave heroin? Yes. Okay. Yes. Cognitive functions. Yeah. So again, you can light yourself up with endocannabinoid activity. There's no question about that. You can make your brain go faster. You can dial in, the trains to be more focused. There's all kinds of things as to cognitive function that need to be studied, but that are kind of already, there's solutions out there now, which is pretty cool. Neurodegeneration. So again, what causes neurodegeneration? God is a perfect engineer. You don't just it's caused inflammation. So cannabinoids impact decreased neuroinflammation is a big deal. And that's a whole drug and field of study and everything just right there. Inflammation and autoimmune diseases, I think, these are mostly gut related, infection in the gut related, but certainly the cannabinoid system is involved and the immune system is involved. So how do we teach our bodies, say, or give our bodies the horsepower to fight off the bad bugs that we have in our biome and all over our body? Well, again, this is an area of study and research. I spend a lot of time here because I think a lot of what's wrong with us is infection by pathogens. And so how your immune system works there, how your endocannabinoid system works there, how you defend yourself, and then how you also fight off things is super duper important, because we can be a lot more than we are right now, boys and girls. We really can. We arrogantly, and I thought this way too, oh, we have it all figured out. It's, humans, we've been, studying ourselves for a long time. There's no new ground here. And, we're performing our best selves, right now. That's so far from the truth that we don't know anything, first of all, and we literally live in the sewer, in the toilet of function. So all good news as to upside, right? So pretty cool. Metabolic disease. So again, obesity is just classically characterized in the endocannabinoids. Obesity is one of those things that I can measure your endocannabinoid system if you have high circulating anandamide. In fact, we'll talk about that in a second. I don't want to talk about that yet, because that's a whole nother area of research, is testing, right? So obesity is addressed and can be categorized through the endocannabinoid system. So can liver disease, so can heart disease, so can respiratory disorders, so can gastroenterology. This is osteoporosis, obviously, but I'm not classically trained, no PhD for me, so I do get hung up on some of these words. Reproductive system, dermatology, genetic disorders. So here's a list of approved drugs that have been approved by the FDA. So CBD as a synthetic, as Epidiolex, but you can kind of see Renambit was where they really went wrong in drug development in the endocannabinoid system. So they wanted to build something for weight loss. Worked great for weight loss. Unfortunately, it just caused you to want to kill yourself. So that's what it says: psychiatric adverse effects, including depression, and the study was withdrawn. Okay, so let's make sure we beat this horse enough. So now we're going to get into discussion. This is a very good paper, though. And again, if you're interested in the paper, you can just kind of Google search on the title, or we'll put it in the comments if you want. But a guide to targeting the endocannabinoid system in drug design. Okay, well, let's talk about another thing. So in testing, I'm really kind of interested in testing the system. There's so much information that I can get non-invasively about, let's say, your vehicle, right? So I can test your saliva, and I can get all kinds of interesting information from your saliva. I've got a stickia to test in you willy-nilly. So we want a way to basically test you and test this system, but that's non-invasive, right? So, maybe a frequency way to do it, maybe a thermal way to do it, but it's looking like the best way to do it is going to be in saliva and just PCR. But what we're going to want to do is test this endocannabinoid system for veracity, right? So what's going on in the system? And one of the interesting things that happens is in obesity. So in obesity, you think, well, sort of an out of control situation. And what's also out of control in obesity is way too many circulating endocannabinoids. So obese people just have an endocannabinoid system. It's almost like the pedal is just stepped on the gas. You just got all these endocannabinoid mediators everywhere. And it's so much so that your body kind of gets lost in the noise, right? It forgets kind of how to signal. So very important in that situation to calm all that stuff down, right? So if you're looking back at what we were previously talking about drug design, that's the way to kind of solve it. But if you want to measure it, again, just measuring anandamide in 2Ag would be beneficial. Now, the other thing that's interesting, and again, I have intellectual property around this, so don't go run out and do your own test. I'm firmly rooted in these principles, but I'm not giving away anything either. And again, there's a lot here. There's as much here in testing as there is in natural products, as there is in all this. So lots of room here, lots of room. But if you're interested in doing this together or something, give me a call. Let's go. Anandamide is also a thing that can be measured. So it's higher in obesity and it's lower in autism. But this just tells me that, oh my gosh, we should be studying these little critters and a lot more system, because this is going to tell us a lot about the status of your vehicle. Are you all broke down and gummed up on the inside? Or, are you kind of functioning and you're doing things and you're kind of handling problems the way that you should? So we don't know unless we measure, right? So we've got to measure the system, and we've got to measure other systems in relation to it. There's so much to do. And it's funny, we think that we have this all figured out in modern medicine, right? So, I have diagnostics, I can take a blood test. Well, again, you don't really want to be jabbing yourself with needles. You don't need to do that. Okay. You don't need to do that. So you can get a lot from saliva. Testing wise, again, if you go, through, let's say, the traditional medical route, you're going to be hooked up to MRIs, you're going to be hooked up to PET scans, you're going to be hooked up to a lot of different, basically functions and machines, diagnostics. And that's going to cost a lot of money. Now, you might not see that money. You might not ever, never really hit your pocketbook because it's coming out of your insurance and things like that. But it's money nonetheless, and it's money that's being spent to do those. Something like a spit test, PCR test is just a very easy test to run. It's very inexpensive to run. And again, if we get these tests right, it's going to tell me a whole lot about what's going on in your endocannabinoid system, which is going to tell me how you're fighting disease, how you're able to handle infections, how your allergy status is. It doesn't really matter. It's just going to give us a lot of information about your body's ability to kind of do things. All right. So probably not what some of you wanted. You probably wanted to deep dive on things like autism. And again, we'll save that for its own show. Because there's been a lot of new developments in autism, and there always is. Autism is a very difficult thing, let's say, to research under pharmaceutical, constraints. So the way these guys have to kind of research it and look at it right now, it's hard to look at. But if you can open your mind to kind of pathogens and, infections, and it sure looks like a really severe infection to me. And I likely can prove that. But anyway, there's lots of stuff coming with autism, and that's something I think that we'll have solved soon, or we'll at least have better explained and better treated very, very soon. So stay tuned there. But anyway, we'll see you guys next week for another exciting version of Chip Talks podcast. Bye.